Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to this Green Lab Talk. So I'm Greta, I'm one of the senior medical scientists in the virology lab, which is part of the National Donor Screening Labs here in the NBC. We're part of the NDSL with Nat and Grouping, and I'm one of the Green Lab ambassadors that took part in the Green Lab project. So we also have Fiona from Nat and Lolita from Grouping, who are our Green Lab ambassadors as well. So the NDSL was the pilot group who took part in the Green Lab project using My Green Lab, which are the gold standard for lab sustainability worldwide. So they were our framework for becoming more sustainable. And we started this in March of 2021 by doing a baseline assessment to show us what our current sustainability practices are, basically where we're at with our sustainability. And from this assessment, we got a huge report telling us all the ways that we can become more sustainable and what best practices we could implement in our own labs. So we started 9 months of implementing all the suggested changes, anything that we could do ourselves, anything that we could work with other departments to implement. And after 9 months, we completed the certification assessment. So everybody in the labs completed this along with our head of testing and the facilities department. So you get a bigger picture of how the IBTS is doing from a sustainability point of view. So after the certification assessment, we became the first medical science lab to be awarded green level certification from My Green Labs. That's the certificate behind me, and that's their highest certification award. So we did all this by really getting informed on what our practices are and going by the suggestions from My Green Lab and what we can take from them and implement in here, delegating any of the tasks that we could to our team members in the lab, including sustainability discussions in our meetings. So the Green Lab ambassadors would bring up what we're doing, what our next steps are, and how we're getting on at our lab meetings, and discussing any ideas with staff and asking for suggestions. So since the award, we've completed the freezer challenge. So this ran from January to July, and we basically cleared out any of our freezers and made inventories, defrosted the freezers and just make sure they're in good condition. We completed a spring clean in the labs and donated any of our unused equipment to TU Dublin. Anything that they wanted, they came to collect. So that was brilliant. Didn't have to go to landfill. And it just made the lab a nicer place to work with everything more organized and just clearer. And we also were recognized as the Sustainable Team of the Year by PwC during the summer. So that was a really nice award for our achievement. So throughout the year, we're also working on our Green Lab guides. This is what I'm going to kind of bring you through today. So it's full of small changes that you can implement in your lab or in your department just to kind of move towards better sustainability practices. And the idea of this is to pick as many actions as possible from each heading and start becoming more sustainable where you are. So the stuff that I'm going to go through today is stuff that we could actually do without getting too much involvement from any other departments or no involvement at all. So stuff that we could do ourselves once the team agreed to go ahead and do it. So what we cover in here is our energy use, our water use, our recycling and waste, green chemistry, and community. So hopefully this will help you start the sustainability journey wherever you are. So this is the guide here in front of me, and I'll just go through some of the actions that we did going off the different headings. So here in energy, we actually started consciously turning off all the lights in the support rooms that have no sensor lights. So most of the labs have their own sensor lights on the main floor, but our referral room, our sample prep room, and our washroom don't have sensor lights, and neither in any of the offices. So at the end of the day, we made sure to turn those lights off. Some of those rooms actually get a lot of natural light in the mornings, so we try to avoid turning on the light in there if we can make do with the natural light that comes in. And we printed off some labels and just stuck them around the doors and the light switches just to remind people on their way out that they can turn off the light in there so they know there's not a sensor there to do it for them. Also concentrating on turning off PCs and making sure they go into sleep mode if you can't turn them off, rather than leaving them on with a screensaver. And then checked our printers so that they're all in default black and white and double-sided printing. And if you notice that any of your printers don't do this, we just kind of tried to remember to do this if we can't make it the default setting, because not every program will let you do that on the systems. So the next one was our equipment. And what we did there was implement a traffic light system. So you could use green to switch off after use, yellow to switch off at the end of the day, and red to not switch off. So in our lab, we pretty much had either green or red. So anything that could be switched off got a green sticker to just have a visual cue for anybody to turn off the shredder when it's not in use, turn off the vortex when it's not in use, turn off the centrifuge when it's not in use. So you're just saving that little bit of energy throughout the day. We also investigated any equipment that we had in the lab that had been there for years and nobody was really using it. So we used the asset numbers and got in contact with validation to find out if they actually belong to us or if they belong to a different department, and if they belong to us, to see if we could decommission it. So we actually managed to decommission a centrifuge and some weighing scales that were just lying around the place. So that's energy savings there as well. We got more educated about our fume hood use and our biological safety cabinet use. So there's different fume hoods and biological safety cabinets around the building. So it's good practice to find out what you have and what the limitations are of each. So with our fume hoods, we actually can't shut the sash on them. So we try and save energy in other ways by turning off the light, making sure the sash is up halfway at the level it needs to be up at, and making sure that nothing is stored in there that doesn't need to be actually in there. So we have very minimal stuff in the fume hoods. So that's something that can be easily done in your own lab as well. And if you have a BSC that can be shut off, making sure that it's only on when you're using it. And that was some of our equipment pieces that we did fairly early on in the project. And then we've got our fridges and freezers. So like I said, we took part in the Migraine Lab International Freezer Challenge. So then that allowed us to create a really clear and concise inventory of what's actually in the freezers, assigning dates to certain samples. So if you can turn or throw something out after 2 years or 5 years, and checking in with samples that are left there for projects, are they still actually needed or not? So updating your inventory every 6 months is a part of this that we're continuing to do. So we keep on track with our best practices. Another thing that we found out through the project was that if you use styrofoam sheets in your freezers that are maybe not full, so if you have a shelf that's like half full and the freezer is accessed really regularly, you can use styrofoam sheets that come in from your deliveries just to keep the temperature more even in the freezer and not put such a load on the freezer to come back to the correct temperature. So that's something that's handy, and you can just take out the styrofoam sheet when you actually need the space on the shelf in the freezer. And we're also still hoping to increase the temperature of the freezers from -80 to -70 where possible. So that's an ongoing project for us. And then with our water use, so we made sure that we're not forgetting our taps and leaving them on when we're flushing after pouring chemicals that we can pour down the sink. So if something like bleach goes down the sink and you have to flush, make sure not to just leave the washroom and leave it running for 10-15 minutes when it doesn't need to. And also there's glass washers in the grouping lab. So we made sure that the glass washer is only used when it's full, and making sure that we know what water source we actually need to use. So is it deionized water, is it purified water, or is tap water fine? So we're not putting extra pressure on the water system when we don't need any specific water, we just use tap water. Another thing that would be brilliant is using heated beads and not non-circulating water baths. So you're not having the evaporation, you have less risk of contamination in your water baths as well. So the next section was recycling and waste. So this went with our audit that we did, a waste audit in all of the labs, I think of May 2021. And from there, we created new waste streams. So we made sure that these waste streams were really clearly labeled. Anything new that was implemented in the lab, everyone was told about it, and we had flowcharts that told you exactly what can go into each waste stream. So we're using them effectively. And as well, we started using color tape on the floor in the lab. So we have purple lids and yellow lids, and the container, the waste container, is 50-litre yellow bin. So just to distinguish which bin is which, we put purple tape on the floor for the purple lidded bin and yellow tape on the floor for the yellow lidded bin. So there's a quick visual cue on the floor, which is the correct waste stream. We also made sure we have the correct bins in waste hotspots. So if you have your recycling bins beside areas where you're using lots of paper, so it's really easy for recycling over there. And then we have a general waste bin as well in the lab. So you're minimizing the general waste that could go into general waste rather than putting it into biological waste. So we have that general waste bin in the lab as well. We also try to notify other labs when we have excess equipment or supplies. So if you have too many gloves or you've ordered something in that you can share with another lab, especially when expiry date, and you know somebody else is using it, it's just handy to kind of let them know and share it, so it doesn't go to the bin instead of getting used up by the expiry date. So that was some of our waste actions that we did. There's always lots of stuff you can do from there, but that was just some of our quick actions. And for green chemistry, so the main thing that we could do here was actually get educated what the 12 principles of green chemistry are and how we can apply them to our lab, since most of our chemicals are dependent on our suppliers. There's not very much we can do. But what you can definitely do is get in contact with your supplier and ask them what they're doing to make their chemicals more environmentally friendly, and if they have any plans on changing any formulations in the future. We actually had one of our suppliers change their formulation for one of their chemicals, so it changed the waste stream it was going into for us, and it made it went from being corrosive to non-corrosive, so it also made it safer for us. So yeah, getting educated is definitely really important on this, and using the appropriate waste stream is something that we could do for the chemicals that we do have to have in the lab. So we have different blue bins for the different chemicals. And then in the last section, we have community. So obviously we wouldn't be able to have a successful project without the support of the community. So that's everybody from inside the lab to inside the building, and anybody that we contacted for support, such as My Green Lab. So to have a strong community of people who are interested in sustainability, we have Green Lab ambassadors. So to become a Green Lab ambassador, you do a really quick course on the My Green Lab. So it kind of gets you in the headspace of looking at your lab and seeing what can become more sustainable or what you can do to make it more environmentally friendly. And then the Green Lab ambassadors then made sure to bring up our agenda pretty much in the lab meetings. So it was at everyone's to-do list, or on everyone's mind pretty much. We also shared with the wider community what we did. So any of our achievements with My Green Lab was shared with the Academy for Medical Science and released as press releases, so people know that we're actually trying to become better as much as we can in the regulated environment of a lab. And we also created a Green Lab email account. So it's greenlab@ibts.ie. If anybody wants to contact us and ask about anything or has any ideas for their own department and want to see how they could implement it there. So it's just important to remember that you have a community here that really do want to make this a more environmentally friendly place to work, and hopefully you can use the guide to do this. So yeah, don't hesitate to contact us at greenlab@ibts.ie. Thanks so much.